In this video, we're going to create a formula field in Dax that contains multiple if conditions using the switch function. In this example, we have a table called sales reps that contains the rep's name, month-to-date sales, and a yes/no field indicating if the rep is commission-based. If the value in the commission-based field is no, then the rep receives a flat commission of $250 per month, regardless of how much they sell. If the field value is yes, then the commission structure is as follows. Monthly sales $10,000 or more, earn a 10% commission. Sales $7,500 or greater, but less than $10,000, earn a 5% commission. Anything less than $7,500 earns a 3% commission. With this structure, we have multiple conditions with multiple outcomes. Before we begin, let's look at an example of the switch function in its most basic form. Following that, we'll create a formula that can handle multiple tests for our different sales commission scenarios. So in our first example, we'll look at the name field of our table to first check if the name is equal to Tim Wilson. If so, we want to return a text value of Tim. Then we'll add a second check to see if the name field is equal to Amy Knox. If it is, we want to return a text value of Amy. Our last input will be the default value to return if the name field is not equal to Tim Wilson or Amy Knox. If this is true, then we just want to return the text not Tim or Amy. Under Table Tools, select the option for New Column and call this field Test. The first input of the switch is the expression to be evaluated. Here, that will be the name field from our sales rep table. The inputs after the first argument consist of one or more pairs of potential values that could be returned by the first argument test and the result you want to return if that happens. Here we'll first check to see if the name field is equal to Tim Wilson. If it is, we want to return a text value of Tim. Next, we'll check to see if the name field is equal to Amy Knox. If it is, we want to return a text value of Amy. The last input consists of a default output value if none of the previous criteria values match to what the first argument produces. If that happens, we want to return the text not Tim or Amy. The switch returns Tim if the value in the name field equals Tim Wilson and Amy if the name equals Amy Knox. For anything else where no matches are found, it returns the default text of not Tim or Amy. Now we'll use the switch function to create our multi-conditional formula. Here we need to modify the inputs since we have multiple conditions that produce true/false values. In order to make this work, our first input, the expression to evaluate, needs to be the true function. This function always produces an output of true. The next input would be our first condition, which would produce true or false. This output would be evaluated against the output of our true function in the first argument. If there's a match, then our first result related to that condition would be returned. If the first condition produced false, it would move on to the next condition. If none of our conditions produce true, then the switch would produce our default input at the end of the formula. Now we'll add a new field and call it commission. Next, we'll insert our switch function. You can hit Alt+Enter to continue the formula on a new line. For the first input, insert the true function. This returns true. This is what all our other conditions will be evaluated against. Hit Alt+Enter to go to the next line. Now we'll input our first condition, a test to see if the commission-based field is equal to a value of no. If that is true, then we want to return a value of $250. If false, we want to move to our next condition. This being, if the month-to-date sales value is greater than or equal to $10,000. If that is true, we want to multiply the month-to-date sales field amount by 10%. We'll copy this line of code and paste it into the line below. Here we'll modify this condition to be anything greater than or equal to $7,500. If this is true, then we want the result to be the month-to-date sales amount multiplied by 5%. Finally, we'll come down on a new line and input our default result we want to return if none of the previous conditions are true. This will be the month-to-date sales amount multiplied by 3%. Our output returns a flat $250 if the commission-based field is equal to no. For all others, it calculates the sales commission based on the percentage of our month-to-date sales amount fee structure. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.